Yay Networks.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Welcome to this week's episode of our Dream Bold Travel and Adventure series. So y'all probably heard this along the way, but each week for about 12 weeks, we are doing a series, a travel series, and we're walking you through. We've got all these different experts joining us each week. I'm co-hosting it each week with Scott Wonke, physical therapist with Oxnard Health. Hey, Scott.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
And this week, we're actually going to be joined by Mimsie Ladner. Now, Mimsie does she does PR actually and digital content. She's a digital content specialist for Oxnard Health. She is the queen of solo travel. So I'm excited to have her with us.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to her.
She's lived in South Korea for years. She's on her own by herself. She went to visit Mexico, ended up staying and living and working from Mexico. So she has had just this wealth of experiences throughout her life that she'll be sharing with us. She'll be talking about solo travel, why and how, because there's a lot of times someone wants to take a trip, but if you don't have someone to do it with you, so many times we wait until, okay, when,
Yes.
And she'll also be talking with us about health insurance and specifically travel health insurance. And it's something that I think we don't really think about. And but you never know as you're traveling what's going to happen.
Exactly. That's part of the adventure.
I want to ask you your travels, and I'll share with our listeners this. I'm going to share my experience that I was really this was one that we fortunately didn't have to go to the emergency room for, but had we, I didn't even think about traveler's insurance for this. So we're hiking and we are on a trail where it is really desolate and there really wasn't anybody. We did a 2.5-hour hike. Again, to Scott, who hikes for days in the Appalachians.
It's still a good hike.
It's still a decent
out there.
And it's a loop. So we're about, just gauging from the image of the map that I had screenshot on my phone. We're about 2.5 hours in. We've got about 30 minutes till the end. We've passed one person. So it's pretty desolate, and it was dry. There was a lot of brush and the brush was overgrown a lot to where we're kind of pushing through it with our legs and stuff. We get to a point and it's a wider part of the path. And it's going downhill. It's a little gravelly. So you're kind of watching your footing because it's kind of skiddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And fortunately, we're talking, plus the noise we were making with that, I think saved us because we're walking and we're talking again. No one's around. The path is maybe 5 feet wide. And all of a sudden we hear it. And we hear the beginning of something that maybe sounds a little bit like a locust that we're used to hear in New Orleans. It was a rattlesnake.
Oh, God.
Have you ever come face to face with one?
Not face to face, but close. I wasn't bent down looking at him right in the eyes. But yes, I've come up to the rattlesnake. It's scary.
Did it rattle at you?
Oh, yeah.
It's piercing. And thank goodness it lets us know. So Brad and I have not. We've done a lot of hiking. We've not encountered a rattlesnake. We are not as well equipped as you are and have the experiences you do. So we panic, so Brad pushes me back. So we're running back up this hill. It wasn't a steep hill, but we're running back up, fleeing for our lives in my mind, because in my mind, this rattlesnake is after us. Right. How fast can we run to outrun it? I know Brad's right next to me. So we get about 20 yards up. Then we're what do? We turn around. Okay, the snake is not chasing us. We don't see it anywhere. And Brad starts kind of throwing rocks into that area. And I'm I don't know if that's a good thing, a bad thing, what's happening. And is it going to make it mad? Is it going to come out of nowhere and sneak attack us? But I'm panicked and I'm thinking we're going to have to go back the way we came. And he's like, Molly, that's 2.5 hours through what was even more overgrown brush. We know where this snake is.
Good point.
We don't know where all those other snakes are. So I'm so afraid though. My heart is racing. I'm thinking, did it give us a warning? And it's now it's just crouched and waiting for us if snakes crouch, of course. But, and so then he's we're kind of deciding, do we go this way, 30, towards the end? Do we try to wait it out and try to pass back by this or do we go the reverse? So we didn't think to call you then. Unfortunately, we had
I would have loved to have gotten that call.
no, you would have known what to do. So right then there, Brad's like, let's ask our friend Alex. So our friend Alex lives in a place where he has lots of rattlesnakes near his house, and he's like dealt with rattlesnakes often. So he texts him and he said, oh, good. He texted me back. Like, so we've got service, because we weren't sure if we had service. I'm like, okay, well, what did he text? He's about to take the pasta off the stove. He'll call us in a minute. I'm like, what?
There's a rattlesnake here.
Like, what did you text him? His text to him said, hey, we have a snake question for you. Oh. Alex texts back, oh, I'm about to take the pasta off the stove. I'll call you. I'm like, Brad, so I'm still in full on panic mode.
Right.
I'm like, he has a toddler. It could be tomorrow before he calls us back. I mean, he could completely forget. So then we're kind of he's like, do you want to call him? Yes. So I call him, and he's sort of like, hey dude, what's up? Laughing, thinking it's Brad calling. I'm like, this is Molly. We have an emergency. We are face to face with a rattlesnake. We had an encounter. So he's like, kind of like you know, like he's not like, oh my gosh, you might die on this mountain. Mm-hmm. He's kind of chuckling a little bit. And then he explained, they're not aggressive. He's not, they typically, from what I understand, they can leap about the length of their body.
Yes, from a coiled position.
And he was coiled. Yes, I should have said that. So he was coiled, head up, looking and rattling. And so we would estimate maybe like 5 feet at the most. So, okay. So then, you know, as if it's going to help, I was like, let's keep Alex on speakerphone. As we make our way
have
around.
Alex talk to him.
Right. The snake whisperer. So we make it through. We continued along the trail the way we had originally planned to go, and 30 minutes to the end. There was actually, if we got towards the end, you could take a right to go up a little bit more to see some waterfalls, or the left was like back to our car. I said, well, Brad, right is waterfalls, left is car. He's like, oh, car. Like,
car.
we're done. We're signing off for today. But all of that is to say, when we got back to, you know, Wi-Fi and all, I looked, what do you do if you were bit by a rattlesnake? And it was everything we would have thought. We would have done everything wrong. It said, don't tourniquet it, don't lance it, don't suck the venom. And it also said, stay calm, don't let your heart rate get up.
Oh, missed that one.
Yeah. And so fortunately, we didn't have to kick in anything of like going to the hospital or an emergency call, or what do you do in that kind of a situation? But you know, you think about travelers' health insurance and these types of things.
Absolutely. That begs that very choice. What
Have
do you do?
you ever had gotten I don't know, like hiking and had an encounter or bit, or had anything where you had to go to emergency room?
Yes, actually, down in Costa Rica on one of my trips down there, I was hiking in the jungle, just having a great time, following a river, and there were a lot of waterfalls that you could climb up and jump off. Great fun. Since this is solo travel, again, I was by myself.
Right.
So not always the smartest thing to do. And I kind of broke my own cardinal rule of letting people know where I was going. So whenever I would stay at a hostel or anywhere, even stateside, you always put in a permit. You let someone know you have a contact. And I didn't do that because I was just going to go for like an hour. And I was climbing up these rocks, and I felt severe pain in my left wrist. And I looked down, and I had a centipede latched onto me. Of course, you know, your initial response.
How big is it?
He was probably like 4 or 5 inches, just clamped onto my. Wow. Actually, I can show you where he got me right there.
Wow.
So, you know, I just flicked him off real quick, and I thought, okay, I'd never been bit by a centipede before.
I wouldn't have known.
I don't know if this one was poisonous or not, so I just kept climbing. And when I got to the top, I went to grab a rock, and I couldn't close my fingers, and I looked down and basically had a boxing mitt on my hand. I was like, wow, this is bad. The fun part was the only way down was to jump into the river, so that was great. So I jumped, swam, and
were you scared at this point, or are you just like, yeah, well, gotta jump?
I think I'm just dumb enough not to be scared. So, but I was worried because my first thought was, okay, now I'm in Central America. Now I'm good. Something's gonna have to help me. So I just got to the hostel, and a local actually took me to a clinic where they gave me some anti-venom and wrapped me up, gave me some cold packs. They actually took an x-ray, which was really weird. And I'll never forget this x-ray room because it was the walls were rusted. It was not clean. It was
you were glad it was just an x-ray?
I was like, this is just an x-ray. But the people could not have been kinder. And again, I spoke enough Spanish to get by, but I didn't know what was going to occur as far as, I mean, I had ID and I had some money, and it came out to US dollars, about $15.
Wow.
I was so lucky. And talking to other people traveling, you know, they explained that that's not always the case. It doesn't always end that well. but I
So
learned my lesson. So from then on, I look into travel insurance.
So you do.
Mm-hmm,
And what
absolutely.
Mimsie will be talking to us about is the different types of traveler's insurance, because there are some people who are more like adventure seeking, like what we're talking about with Scott's travels, or there's some who might need just kind of basic. Like we were in Europe, it was a couple of years ago. We were in the tiny place. It was actually in Italy, in northern Italy. And Brad had an infection in his eye. It was sort of like a sty, but it kept getting bigger and bigger. And it was painful, everything. And it wasn't going down. And what's also interesting is the pharmacy there, the pharmacist can prescribe in Europe. And so you don't always have to have a doctor's prescription. Some things the pharmacist can dispense medications without, basically they're prescribing it. They're not having to wait for a doctor's prescription. So he got the, topical to put on it, but it wasn't getting any better. So the pharmacist then said, you need to go to a doctor. So we went into, and basically in very broken English, the Italian physician is telling Brad that he's giving him an antibiotic and he's going to give him a different topical to put on it. And if it doesn't work, he's going to need to, and he made motions with his hands and some sound effects that basically was like slicing it open and pressing this thing out of it. And he was like, psh, psh, and moved his hands to show what it would look like. It was like, oh my gosh,
I hope it works.
But that was $50.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't have traveler's insurance. And so we were really fortunate that, like you, we were in a place like that.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we're going to have now, hope we didn't scare anybody away from the concept of solo travel.
It was both were very happy endings, and we learned more about rattlesnakes.
Exactly.
And I learned about centipedes and where not to get an X-ray. And I mean, it's a learning experience.
It is, and it's stories
Exactly.
that we're coming back with. So in just a minute, we will join our Zoom, and so as you'll hear, each Monday at 12 noon, we're doing this Zoom with our Oxnard Health and Wellness team and really the whole Oxnard Health team who's open and invited to this. And so this is based on the Dream Bold premise. And this is an initiative that's launched by our VP, Deidre Diaz, and our Oxnard Health and Wellness Solutions team. And it's based on a book called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly, with the overarching idea being that our success and our focus on our work life doesn't have to be totally separate from our own goals, our own dreams. And so throughout the year, we have different types of initiatives that we're focusing on, and Scott and I are leading the adventure. You're right.
We're living it.
We're leading and living the adventure and travel series. So we've got the Zoom that is live. So you'll hear us talk about the chat or things that people might be putting in there or links, but we keep it to where nothing is a visual that you have to see. Everything is just conversation that also works well for podcasts. So anything that we're putting into the chat, you'll hear us talk about, you can also find it in the show notes of this episode. So with that, let's go ahead and join Mimsie with our Zoom. All right. Well, here we are. So y'all, welcome to, I believe this is either our 6th or 7th episode in our travel series. And so if we have anybody new that's joining us, this is a 12-part series that Scott Wonke, physical therapist with Oxnard Health, and myself are leading. And all of the podcasts or all of the Zooms that we're doing with you guys live at 12 o'clock on Mondays are also recorded by podcast. So if you're listening in, if last week or this week was your first time to tune in and you're like, wow, this is really cool, you can hear all of the past ones in the podcast as well. And we've had different experts, somebody from the Points Guy, guiding through how to use different airline miles, et cetera. We had HR. How do you have the conversation with your leader about taking time off of work? So interesting topics. And this week we were joined by Mimsie Ladner, and Mimsie is in-house with Oxnard Health with us. And so she can talk a little bit about her work there, but Mimsie's expertise, by experience over the years, is solo travel. And so our focus this week with Mimsie is solo travel. And she's also touching on what we were just talking about leading into the Zoom. Y'all might have heard us chatting about it, but health insurance and travel health insurance. So welcome, Mimsie.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You're perfect for this. So
I'm really excited to be chatting about this. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I'm, always preaching the praises of solo travel. So it's really great to be here.
Well, tell our listeners, our viewers, a bit about you, your background, kind of personally and professionally, and what you do, and kind of your expertise, and why we roped you into this solo travel episode.
Yes, well, I am a senior digital content specialist on our digital marketing team here at Auctioner Health, and I work specifically within our social media team. Primarily, my main roles these days are around our thought leadership initiatives. So I work pretty closely with our executives and our senior physicians to provide them with the tools that they need to help bolster their presence on social media and help to amplify auctioneers' messages on those platforms as well. But prior to my work at Auctioner, I've been with our company for about 3 years now. But prior to now, I actually lived in South Korea for about a decade. First as an English teacher and then in digital marketing as well. But yeah, that's really where I started to explore solo travel and the beauty of travel, and actually was inspired to also start my own business, which is called Gachi. It is a small business, but we specialize in handcrafted artisan teas. So that's a little project that I do on the side now. But that was sort of born from my experiences and my love of tea culture, which came about during my time in South Korea.
Mimsie's actually been a guest on the podcast with me before, talking about health benefits of tea and gachi. So I'll link to that too if anybody's interested. I just also think it's really cool that your experiences there, you met all these farmers, you met these families, you met these really small batch tea producers. And then to me, it was like I had one of those big, like really cool, like what if moments, like we can't access these. There's not somebody that's really, there's not many people that are really importing these on the small level and working with these really individually family owned businesses. And that's something that had you not taken that step out, and you would have never had those experiences and those relationships. And so that's sort of like one of these spinoffs of taking the leap and moving there, but then also solo travel and really continuing to enrich. How old were you when you moved to South Korea to teach?
I was 22. So I was young and fresh out of college, very, fearless, of course, at that point. But yeah, you're totally right. And that's kind of one thing that I always talk about when I am talking about solo travel is that, when we explore new places, especially on our own, our eyes are just really open to, not only new perspectives and ways of doing things, but we really discover a lot about ourselves and, what we like and new interests and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely been a huge part of that journey.
Have you always been into travel, or how did you get bitten by that bug?
Yes. So I have very vivid memories of being a young child and staying up, all night, going through like my children's atlas or, reading picture books about Egyptology. So, I grew up in a small town, Bay St. Louis. Probably many of us in this area are familiar with Bay St. Louis. But yeah, grew up in a very small, homogenous town, not much exposure to different cultures and backgrounds and things like that. But yeah, despite that, I just always remember having a curiosity about different places around the world and different cultures and food. And so it's something, and I don't really know what triggered it, to be honest with you, but I do have those really vivid memories and interest about the world from a very young age. I don't think I didn't really have the ability to start traveling until I was in college, though. So that was really the first time that I started to spread my wings and delve into traveling.
Was that on your own, or was that with things that the school had put together, different trips or kind of groups to travel together?
Well, yes, I did visit Mexico a few times through my university. But the first big trip that I went on, it was actually my last year in college. And, all throughout college, I had been wanting to go on a trip. And so I was trying to enlist friends to join me and to experience that with me. But I always heard, lots of excuses. Let's just go next year. I don't have the money to travel right now. So, after a few years of hearing these same excuses over and over again, I kind of started to realize that, if I didn't do this on my own, I was probably never going to have the opportunity to check off these, different destinations on my travel bucket list. So, I was like, life is too short. I might as well just do this on my own. So I started researching, and I found out about a company called Contiki. And there are a few companies like this around the world, but essentially this company organizes group trips for 20 and 30 somethings to, around different parts of the world. So I signed up for one of these trips, and it was called the European Contrast Tour, I believe. And so, just signed up, and basically they plan out the itinerary for you. You have like a few different opportunities to, add on what you want to do. But yeah, I joined up on this trip one summer, flew to London on my own, and then met up with this group of, 30 individuals from around the world, and was off on a summer adventure. It was super fun.
How long of a trip was that?
5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So we did, 13 countries around Europe. Like I said, there were about 30 of us. And, of course, we were all young, and everyone was pretty much there on their own. So, right away, we all kind of shared that. And despite coming from different backgrounds and different countries, there are even a few people on our tour who didn't fully speak English. But by the end of the trip, we were all best friends, and all, had this incredible experience that, 15 years later, we're still connecting on social media. We're still reminiscing. I've had the opportunity to meet up with a bunch of those trip mates when I was living in Korea, as I've traveled, again to Europe, to other parts of the US. It was a great first trip. I kind of refer to it as my training wheels trip of solo travel.
It was because it gave you that safety net also, for sure.
Absolutely. Because yes, I was traveling alone on my own or without, someone that I knew. But at the same time, I had this great group of people that I could explore with, and a guide as well. So yes, there was that added benefit of that.
And like you said, there are companies that have whatever your age, your demographic, kind of like that group that you're looking toward. There are groups for that can help to do exactly what Mimsie's talking about. And so Contiki is the one that she worked with. But if that's something that you're like, hey, I want to explore that, do a search for that, to see what's out there. I'm even thinking as people get older, there's this smaller, not the big cruise ships, but like those smaller riverboat cruises that might only have like 100 or so people on it. And all the excursions at the different places are planned. So it may not be a deep immersion into a culture that someone wants, but it might be what fits for that person's lifestyle. So something for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, this is becoming a growing trend as well. So like you said, whatever your age, whatever your interest, there is a group for you.
Be there. And so after you graduated, you moved to South Korea. You also, along the way, went to nursing school. Was that before South Korea?
Yes. Actually, what I studied in university. So I have certainly taken a very unique and unconventional career path for sure. But that's actually what sort of triggered my interest in living abroad. Is I studied nursing, and I kind of had hesitations about jumping into the career, but I had an opportunity to work as a live-in nurse with a woman in Germany. And so I was super excited about having the opportunity to live abroad, especially having done this, European trip and still high on that travel bug. The week before I was going to leave, unfortunately, her husband fell and broke his hip. So the trip was canceled. But I still, had that eagerness to live abroad. And so I started, Googling and looking around to see, what can I do? What would give me the opportunity to sort of just pick up and leave and be in a secure position? And so, I found an English teaching gig in South Korea, and right out of university, not having much money, I found it very attractive because they offered me for my airfare, for my apartment, and these English teaching gigs in Asia are oftentimes fairly easy for even someone without much education experience to go into. And the process was very streamlined at that time. So I applied for a job, and then a month later I was in South Korea.
So also that's a kind of that safety net of going there to teach English versus going there just to maybe backpack and you don't have a plan. Like it sort of gave you that anchor and that point of stability, and then you could kind of explore throughout. You've heard me talk about my friend Amy. She lives in DC now. Mimsie's met her, but she's lived all over the world what got her was actually the same thing. She graduated from college. She did her master's, and right after she finished her master's degree, she said, I'm going to move to Japan to teach English. Same thing. She didn't really have she wasn't a teacher at the time, but that was her next step. And similar to Mimsie, that was the beginning of what became really bitten by it, and that exploration hardwiring that is part of y'all. Yeah. I actually had put Mimsie and Amy together for a lunch because I was like, y'all must meet. But so talk to us about the benefits of traveling alone, traveling solo, because it is one where I think a lot of people think, well, what am I going to do? Or if I see things, I want to be able to share that with someone. Like, talk to us about the benefits of doing it solo.
Sure. Well, the benefits in my mind are just really and truthfully endless. One of the big ones, of course, is that, traveling solo really helps you to learn more about yourself and what you're capable of doing. A lot of times people are kind of nervous about traveling alone because they just don't think that they're going to have what it takes, to potentially be in a situation that might be a little uncomfortable, to navigate an area where maybe they don't speak the same language. So a lot of that is born out of fear. But when you do sort of, take that jump and decide to explore on your own, you really gain a lot of self-confidence, whether, you're negotiating your way through a purchase at a market in, a language that you don't speak, or if you're troubleshooting a travel hiccup. For example, I remember one time I was in Bangkok, and the ATM that I was using ate my card. So I suddenly found myself without cash, without money. And so, I had to navigate my way through that. I didn't have anyone there to sort of hold my hand and help me figure that out on my own. So of course, it was stressful, but you come out of situations like that, a much more confident version of yourself. And to be quite frank, a much more fearless version of yourself as well. In addition to that, traveling solo really helps you to just slow down. When you're traveling with a group of friends or a companion, you might find yourself with a lot of distractions around you, or the need to, continuously be talking or connecting. But without, having a companion with you, you really are given a permission slip to just take a step back and take things in as they come along, and to really reflect on those experiences that you're having. Another benefit, of course, is you can be selfish, and a lot of people don't like this word, but sometimes it's good to be selfish. It's not always a bad thing. If you're going to a place and you want to see, the X, Y, and Z landmark, or visit a particular museum, you can do so on your own time. You can eat what you want to eat. You can wake up late if you want to wake up late, or early for that matter. So it really gives you a chance to just do what you want to do without having to feel like you need to be, on someone else's schedule or compromising.
I love that you said that.
I was just going to say, I know that this is right up your alley.
My language, and I've had the same experience. Getting up and I want to go do this. I don't have to ask anyone. I just go. It's fantastic. It's freeing. And to your point, Of course, it strengthens you and emboldens you. But I also found that traveling alone allowed me to see things as they were, untainted. Not that anyone would mean to give you a skewed view, but when you're with someone and you have this common background, sometimes they can interject things, and maybe you'll miss some cultural aspects when you're just seeing them pure and you're experiencing them without anyone else's opinion. And I always loved that too, because I would have a wonderful experience and then meet someone else at a train station and ask them, have you been here? And they would tell me, oh yeah, but this, I'm like, oh, well, that's not at all what I was thinking. So I really love that aspect as well.
Absolutely. And that actually brings me to the next point, one that I find to be the biggest benefit of traveling alone. And that's just, being able to meet new people that you wouldn't otherwise be meeting. So like you said, actually approaching someone at a train station and having a conversation with them, you might not be doing that if you are traveling with a friend. I am really an introverted individual. So, when I am traveling with a companion, more often than not, I do find myself sort of sticking to them and not really putting myself out there. When you're traveling alone, whether it's for a long weekend or for longer term, you really do have to, sort of engage with other people. And in doing so, you really do get out of that bubble that you might usually find yourself in, and learn about new perspectives, new ways of thinking. So, in that way, that also helps you to grow and to see the world in entirely new ways.
And when you meet people that are kind of hesitant to take that trip on your own, like you said, hear all those excuses, so they themselves start putting up, how do you help guide them to get rid of some of that hesitancy?
Sure. Well, everyone's different, right? And so, there are plenty of different reasons that a person might be hesitant to travel alone. Again, a lot of it comes down to just being afraid of the unknown, especially for people that might be new to traveling, or especially new to traveling on their own. They're scared. They're scared that something bad will happen, or they're anxious about, not knowing how to plan out the logistics, or they're nervous that they might get lonely. And certainly movies like various horror movies, whether it's Hostel or these other like gone bad movies,
they don't help any.
No, they do not help.
They don't help at all, right?
You have all your organs, right? All these traveling.
I have managed to make it through with all of my organs, so I'm doing okay. And yeah, fortunately, I haven't really had any, crazy things happen to me in my travels. Of course, it's good to, go in and be mindful that things could happen. So of course, it's good to be prepared. And that's really what it comes down to, is being prepared. And so a lot of times, just taking a few steps to like work out, the travel logistics beforehand will really help to make the trip go, smoothly, and eliminate some of those anxieties or hesitancies about traveling.
And a big one, I think, like you said, yes, people are afraid like they might feel lonely, or I think a lot of times people just aren't by themselves much.
Exactly.
People are surrounded with, whether it's work or home or whatever, a lot of people don't have that much time alone with their own thoughts. And even that can be scary. So that can be a whole nother thing that we might spend less time addressing. But I think another big one that we can really talk about is the nervousness of knowing how to plan. And so doing something like a guided trip like Mimsie did for that first time can sort of let you see, okay, here's the lay of the land, or here's what it looked like. And that can kind of be, or even if you have never done it, you may go to a place like we went to Egypt for the first time. We've only been once, and we'd love to go back again at some point, but it was so new and different. And there's a lot of instability there. And so that was one where, even though we travel a lot, we typically don't do organized tours at most places we travel. That was one that we still said, when we go there, we're working with one of these travel tours that was recommended. And so that was something that for us it was a safety issue, but it was also an educational issue, because there's so much to learn there. And if we would have done it self-guided, but it also made us a lot more comfortable about going there. So I think it's, no matter how much you've traveled, even something that might be an organized group like that can still be a fit at times.
Absolutely, Molly. And you make a good point about destinations as well. Especially if you're a first-time solo traveler, I think picking the right travel destination is very important, especially, when we're going back to that whole concept of the training wheels trip. So for many people, that might be an English-speaking country, whether it's England or Ireland or Australia. Another thing to consider when you are picking a destination for your first solo travel experience, it should be one with a well-developed tourism industry and a place that is accustomed to foreign visitors. So maybe they're not, a country that speaks English natively, but some countries, say Portugal or Austria or Japan even, they do have a really well-developed tourism infrastructure. So they are a little bit more easy to navigate in terms of just exploring for the first time.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because it's not just Americans who take vacations. So,
Sure.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Exactly. And that's another thing to keep in mind is, you're traveling to a different country. So you certainly have to approach, wherever you're going with an open mind, knowing that, they are not your home country. They are not America. Maybe they're not going to speak English. Maybe they're not going to do everything like you're used to doing. And so approaching travel with an open mind is going to help you to enjoy it more.
So if someone has that hesitation, one of the first things we would say is, okay, make sure that you're setting yourself up for success by selecting a destination that aligns with or makes it, I don't want to say easier, but it is a little bit easier. If English is a language that's easily spoken, if not the native language, and they're familiar with tourism and they have things set up for that network, like that can make it, set yourself up for enjoyment and ease. By choosing
and there's a plethora of tips from authors such as Mimsie,
right?
That you can read and learn from.
Right. Okay. So, what are some of the other things for tips for first-time solo travelers, or someone who's looking to do a solo travel maybe bigger than they have before?
Okay. Yeah. So, like I was saying before, it's always good to be prepared. So things that I like to do before I go is, you mentioned, of course, signing up for a guided tour. And that really is a great way to sort of get the lay of the land. But I also like to sort of map out my travel journey before I even leave. So, a month in advance, I'm starting to look at the places that I want to visit. I'm looking at the restaurants where I want to eat. And then what I do is I go on, Google has a great feature, My Maps. It's a little bit different than Google Maps. It's actually a platform where you can go and create your own map, drop pins of all of the locations that you want to visit. You can throw in your Airbnb or your accommodation. You can add in the train station if you're going to be arriving by train. That way you can really get a great visual overview of what your destination looks like and how things are related or how things are located in relation to one another. So not only is that going to help you to plan out your days and really get the most of your experiences while you're there, but as soon as you arrive, you're already going to have a bit of orientation. So right away, you're going to be feeling, safer and more aware of your surroundings. So that's the first tip.
I had no idea that even existed
until I got your notes and I looked it up. It's great.
Yeah, you could use that for all types of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can also download an offline version of your own map that you create. So even if you're in a place where you don't have immediate access to an internet connection, you're still going to have that to help you navigate.
Very cool.
And since you're solo, it's your plan. So it makes it even easier.
Exactly. Another thing that I would recommend people to do, in addition to sort of mapping out their trip, is knowing how you're going to get from the airport, the train station, or wherever you're arriving to your accommodation. So is it going to be public transportation? Are you going to be taking a taxi? Are you going to be taking an Uber? Is there Uber in this country? So, some countries don't have Uber. They might have some other ride sharing app. So these are all good things to research ahead of time and plan out. So once you're arriving and you know exactly how you're going to get from that point of arrival to your accommodation, it's just going to make you feel safer, and it's going to make that entire trip experience more enjoyable and convenient. Another thing that I would recommend is arriving to your destination during the day. So, going to a new place, of course, going back to the whole fear issue, a lot of people are scared because, they've never been to a new place, and we often are scared of the things that we don't know. But when you're arriving while the sun's still out, things tend to be a little less intimidating. You can see where you're going. If you need to ask for directions, shops are usually open. So there are going to be people that are out and about that can help you. So that's another way to relieve some anxiety.
I wouldn't have thought that, because a lot of times you're looking at, well, what's the shortest duration or the best deal, not necessarily what time. So that's a great tip.
And I used to try to make sure my travel was at night. So I would save on a night in a hostel or something and then start fresh. And it turned out to be the best for the same reason you're talking about, Mimsie. That when I got there, everything was bright and lit up and active. And you
had slept on whatever your mode of transportation was.
I did smell not great, but I was rested and it was bright out.
And you saved a few bucks.
Right.
That's great. Yeah. And then one final tip for the logistics aspect of planning your trip is to make sure that you have a reliable internet connection. So of course, there are all these apps that are going to help make your travel easier, but they're not really going to be of use to you if you can't connect to them. So one thing that I always recommend people do is, check your cell phone service to make sure if, or whether or not you have some sort of international data package available. And if not, one thing that you're going to want to do is purchase a SIM card upon your arrival to your destination. A lot of times airports have cell phone shops, cell service stores in the airport. So you can just go and pick one up. They're usually pretty cheap. What I like to do, if I have the opportunity to do so, is just order one ahead of my trip. You can find them on Amazon. A lot of these companies have, offices located in the US. So it does make it a little bit easier knowing that as soon as you touch ground, you're going to be able to open up your phone, insert that SIM card, and have instant connection when you arrive.
Does that work for iPhones too?
I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I
have no idea.
So that would be something we'd have to look into a little bit further.
Because I think, I know that it's with Androids, but I don't know if the iPhone even allows you to open it to put in a SIM card. So that would be something to note to see. But then, like Mimsie was saying, talking with your plan provider to talk about what your coverage is, and maybe you expand your coverage for the time that you're going to be traveling. Mimsie, one of the things you also had in the notes that you sent to Scott and I ahead of time was the double-decker city sightseeing bus tours.
Yes.
Have we talked about those yet?
Yeah, we talked. I'm also a big fan. I know you are.
Brad loves those, and I like them. He will I think he would stay on because it's such a good way to get your bearings and the lay of the land.
It is. And I usually recommend that people give those a go the first day that they arrive, right? Because so you're getting a bird's eye view of, your destination, and, more often than not, you're able to spot some of the landmarks, your interest. So it really is a great tour to take on your first day. Another one that I would recommend is called Free Tours by Foot. So this one, of course, as its name implies, is a walking tour. But these are available all throughout the world. So most major cities have a free tours by foot option. And basically, you can jump into one of these tours and just sort of pay as, you wish. So they are free, and then you give the guide a tip. But again, you're able to get oriented to your destination. And then it's also wonderful too, because the guides are usually local. So they can give you some really great tips to get the most out of your trip in that destination.
Perfect. And we did get confirmation.
Yes, from Cam, our tech specialist, that you can switch those out pretty easily. Thank you, Cam.
In the iPhone.
In the iPhone.
So that can work. So Android or iPhone. Thanks for that intel. And
Mimsie, you kind of already touched on this, but what kind of tips do you have for meeting people while you're at your destination?
Sure. So, nowadays with, technology and all the various apps available, there are so many ways to meet people. When I first started traveling, this is, back in like 2008 or so. And so travel looked much different than it does now. So when I first started traveling, one thing that I loved to do to meet other people was to stay in a hostel. So I know a lot of people hear hostel and they're like, oh, I just don't know about that. Staying in a communal living space with a bunch of people, going back to the horror movies, like really terrible images painted about hostels. But, the fact of the matter is they're not as bad as the horror movies would have you believe. They're great for meeting solo travelers. I have made some wonderful friends during my stays in hostels. Many of them have planned events. So they might have a board game night or, live music. So it really is just a great way for solo travelers to come together, connect over shared experiences and like-mindedness. I was in Seville, Spain one year. I was traveling by myself around Spain for about a month and met a Japanese girl who was staying in my dorm room, and she and I just clicked. And so I was actually headed to Morocco the next day. I was a little bit nervous about traveling in Marrakesh by myself, but she said, hey, I'll come along with you. And so, we traveled to Morocco together. We went on a camel safari to the Sahara Desert, and it just became like a whole new aspect of the experience. So, yes, hostels are a really great way to meet people.
Scott, you've stayed in a lot.
Yeah, I love hostels. I want to mention that. I mean, we have hostels in the U.S. too. A lot of people just think that's for European or Central American traveling, but we have them here in the U.S.
Sure.
And there's such a variety of hostels. I mean, there are some that offer you private rooms. There's some that offer you just one massive room and you're in there with 10, 12 people or just a few people. So it runs the gamut, but the sense of community that you get there is just phenomenal. So I'm a big fan. And again, all my organs, nothing's been taken. I'm perfectly fine.
That's the most important point to make. Sure. But yeah, I totally agree. So, especially with all the review sites like TripAdvisor, Hostel World, things like that, just if you're curious about a particular hostel, pop in, read the reviews, see what other people are saying about their experiences. Because like you said, Scott, they're all very different. And yeah, if you're not into communal living, stay in a private room. There are lots of options for you out there.
You've also, on some of your recent travels, I was like, I knew you were traveling by yourself and I knew you were going to Mexico but I saw you posted on social and I was like, oh, she must have these friends there that she had not mentioned, or whatever it is. Not that I'm like, why didn't you, but they looked like they were like really good friends. It wasn't. It was, they became good friends, but it was something I believe you ran across it through Airbnb experiences.
Yes.
And this
correct.
group, so Airbnb experiences, I just learned about this maybe a year or two ago. My friend Amy, who I was just talking about, if you go to a place, of course, we're familiar with Airbnb of where to find the place you're going to stay. But search through their experiences because depending on the place, there's always a plethora of people who are happy to take your picture for your Instagram account. Of course, no matter where you are in the world, you're going to find your photographer for your Instagram shoot. But there's also a lot of people who are just like whatever they do that's a local, something that's just like local to that region, that community, whatever's special to it. You can often find someone who's going to be leading either a tour or an event, hands-on immersion into it. And so that's what Mimsie had done.
Yes. And the thing that I love most about these Airbnb experiences is that they're led by locals. They're not organized through a tour company. So I know a lot of people, are against the whole like organized tour thing. So this is, this is an event that, or an activity or an experience that is put on by someone who is either, native to the city or who has lived there a while and has expertise in some subject, right? So I've done a lot of great hikes. I've done cooking classes. One of the cool ones that I did here in Mexico was I did a horseback riding experience.
That was, I think, the one that I saw. I was like, who are all these friends she's got? This is because it was shortly after you got there. I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And it was like on an agave farm. And yeah, it's just a really neat way to not only experience local culture, but to meet other travelers who have, similar interest. And so a lot of times, not only have I been able to befriend a lot of the local guides who I still keep in touch with and hang out with from time to time, you're also meeting other travelers as well. Maybe they too are traveling alone. So, a lot of times after the experiences, I'll go out for a beer, have a meal with, some of my fellow Airbnb experience mates. So yeah, great to meet people.
And then you said two things like Facebook groups, or even I didn't know this, but Bumble, like the dating app, there's a version of it though that's for friends. That's
right.
Yeah. I had no idea.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of times, dating apps in other countries, that sounds like a disaster waiting.
That's when you need to let people know where you are.
Very true. Very true. And we'll get into that when we talk about safety. But yeah, Bumble has what they call it's the BFF version. So it's for meeting, platonic friends. And yeah, I've met a lot of great travel companions through Bumble BFF. That's been a really great app. And actually, I've purchased the premium version before I've gone on a trip, so I can actually connect with people that are already there. So especially if it's a shorter trip and I have a limited amount of time, by the time I touch ground, I have a travel buddy to meet up with and have to go on a walking tour with.
In one of your blogs, I read that one of my favorite things is that you had mentioned that you bring kind of local candy with you to pass out and to strike up conversation. When I love that. I always travel with a hacky sack. Do people down here know what a hacky sack is?
I think so.
So a hacky sack and this little game called Farkle, which we play at way up north. And so either kick the sack around with some people waiting for the bus or the train, or teach them this dice game. And I have made more friends doing that than anything else. So your tip with just having something to start a conversation, or even if there's a language barrier, having something to share is just wonderful. That was such a great tip.
It's those small moments that are usually some of the most, special and memorable parts of your travels. That's really cool. I love that.
One of my hacky sacks that I brought, I'll never forget this. It was homemade. And I filled it with popcorn, but I didn't have just regular popcorn. I had the bag of microwave popcorn, which is butter flavored. So everywhere I went, I smelled like butter. So that was the big thing. Oh, the American that smells like butter.
Oh,
like,
that's
no.
Hilarious.
That's a conversation starter in itself. I like that.
Those people now all think that Americans smell like butter.
Like, oh, does he smell like butter? Then he's not from America. Right. No.
That's hilarious. Okay, so talking safety. So, we were jokingly talking about, yes, if you're using a dating app, but safety is one of those concerns of when someone's anxious about traveling solo.
Yes, that's true. But, there are a few different things that you can do to, make yourself feel safer wherever you go. And they're quite simple. They all sort of boil down to just using your common sense. For me personally, if I don't know the area well, if I'm by myself, I'm never really going to be walking around in a dark lit area where there aren't any people, right? It's just common sense. If your gut is telling you that something is not right, listen to it, of course. But yeah, one of the first tips is just to avoid standing out. Americans, unfortunately, are notorious for sticking out in other parts of the world. I don't know if it's, we do typically to be a little bit louder than some of, other people from other different parts of the world, or maybe we dress a certain way, but we do stand out. But when we travel alone, you're most likely going to be a little less noticeable, which is a good thing. Again, another common sense thing, don't carry around valuables, or if you do, conceal them. So, rather than walking around with your expensive camera around your neck, put it in. Don't wear your fancy diamond earrings out while you're, shopping the souks in Morocco, little things like this. Another thing to do is to pack light. So it's much easier to get around, and you're also going to be less of a target. So try to consolidate everything into a single carry-on case. And I know a lot of times that can be a challenge for many of us. When I first started traveling, I started thinking about all the different situations that could happen. Packing for every single situation is generally what I did. But nowadays I just pack the bare essentials, and it really does make me feel a little bit more confident when I'm moving around because I can do so more easily.
Scott and I actually, in our last episode of this travel series, we're going to be talking about strategies for packing as well.
Okay.
And it's exactly what Mimsie said. We don't have to plan for every single scenario and every pair of shoes to go with whatever that outfit is.
Oh, Lord.
But also the thing is, when you're traveling like that, a lot of times you're the only one seeing yourself over and over and over. So it's okay if you wear the same things over and over. So packing, even if it's longer travel, packing light can still sound more, it can be more reasonable than what you think it can be. Cam's like, the shoes kill me. I know. And you can't squeeze shoes down any smaller. So packing. So being light, so you don't have all this, you're not weighted down by stuff. So you're a little bit more agile. Yes. You're a little more nimble.
Exactly. And being observant. So, again, this kind of goes back to not standing out. Just taking a step back to be aware of your surroundings. So, I said I haven't really ever run into a dangerous situation during my travels. The only time that I was almost robbed, I was on the subway in Madrid, and I had just touched down. I got on the subway at the airport, and I was headed toward my hostel that I was staying in at the time. And I was standing there. I had my suitcase at my side. I had my purse. And big traveler, I had a map out, right? So I was checking the map, and I was checking to see where I was on the subway. And the next thing I knew, I looked down and I noticed my purse was unzipped. And I was like, I know for sure that I always keep my bag zipped up, especially when in public. So I zipped it up, and I started looking at my map again, and I glanced back down, and my purse was unzipped again. And so I was like, something weird is going on. And there was a woman behind me who had draped her scarf over my bag and was very inconspicuously unzipping it. Of course, I had everything in my bag, my passport, my wallet, everything. Fortunately, I noticed, and the subway doors opened and she took off. So she wasn't able to get anything, but I was not being observant in that moment. So, that's one of my biggest recommendations, is just to be observant.
And at that point, your face was in the map, but how many times are our faces in our phones?
Right.
So keep the head on a swivel.
And I also found, being where I'm from, we're very we try to be very, very polite. And sometimes it's okay to draw that line in the sand. When you get that feeling, you don't have to be polite. If that feeling's telling you this is not right, you don't need to make excuses. You can just get up and leave.
100%. Sure. And then, also by being observant, it's, not just for safety reasons, but you can also tune into local ways of doing things. So you can watch, the person at the table next to you and see how they're paying their bill, or, how are people using public transport? Are they lining up to get on, or, are they using a ticket or a card? So it's very beneficial to just be aware.
And like y'all both said, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
We all both had talked about always telling someone where you'll be, telling someone either back home or there, having, sending, and Mimsie was saying she sends her itinerary to at least like 3 people with contacts and all that. And Mimsie, tell us about Smart Traveler. It's an app from the U.S. Department of State.
Yes, that's correct. So this is a website that not too many people know about, but it's really useful, especially if you're traveling to an area that might be a bit high risk. Or even just now, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, this is a really good app to sign up for. But through this website, you can register your trip, and they provide travel advisories, visa and vaccine information for the destination where you'll be visiting. They also provide your information to local embassies and consulates in that city.
Great.
Yes.
Did you know about this?
No, I didn't, because I always check in with local embassies.
Yeah.
But
Wow. That's really cool. So we'll put the link to that at Smart Traveler, and it's an app. And for those listening to the podcast, we'll put that in the podcast notes too. But that's really cool to know about. That like ups the game on like telling your mom and your best friend where you're going and sharing your itinerary. Like that's like a whole different level. That's really
what
cool.
What if she's busy cooking pasta? Or
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, of course, as I said, like I do travel, I share my travel itinerary with a handful of people, but my dad is not Liam Neeson, so he's certainly not going to be able to jump in, take in style, but perhaps the U.S. Department of State will.
Right. That's really, really cool. So before we shift gears to traveler's insurance, is there anything else on solo travel for both of y'all? Because y'all have both done a ton of it.
No, Mimsie, the most eloquent, laid out way to do it, other than all the mistakes that I had made. I wish I had met you many, many, many years ago. Would have saved me.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have learned all of these things without making some mistakes myself. And that's part of the travel experience too.
Yeah. So one thing that I think it was my second trip to France. A friend of mine, when I arrived, he was from Marseille, took me to a local market and said, "We're getting you new clothes." And that really, talking about not standing out as American, they didn't fit well. They were tight. They were not me, but it was French. But it really did help me not stand out. They said, still the way you walk, you can tell that you're American. Maybe I smelled like butter. I don't know. But the clothing did help. And that I took that anytime I went to another continent, I would find a market and try to find something that you had mentioned being observant, that I would see on a lot of locals, and tried to blend as much as I could.
Did you find anything that you continued to wear once you got back to the States?
I have a pair of pants from Guatemala that my wife tries to throw away probably 3 times a year, but I love those pants.
You left the tight French pants behind.
No, the tight French pants. And don't buy a bathing suit in France.
Oh yeah, I've seen those before.
Fred, our luggage got lost one time. We were going to visit Amy, who I keep talking about. Amy was living in Taiwan, and so we flew to visit Amy in Taiwan when she had first moved there, and our luggage got not lost, but delayed by about 4 days. And I was fortunate that I could wear Amy's clothes, but Brad was not so fortunate. So we're in Asia, and he had to buy underwear. And same thing. It was like the normal adult sizes were truly like children's sizes. It was the funniest thing ever. Yeah.
Poor guy.
Great souvenir.
It was a great souvenir, great memories. I wanted to also say that Mimsie has a blog. She has her own blog and a lot of travel information there. So we'll be linking to Mimsie's blog in the podcast notes, and also some of the specific posts that Mimsie had on these topics that we've talked about, because it's so much. And so she's covered a lot verbally, but we have a lot there too that we'll put the links to that as well. Okay, so traveler's insurance. Tell us about this.
Yes. So of course, everyone hears horror stories about trips gone wrong, whether it's, lost luggage or, food poisoning. And no one ever really thinks that that's going to happen to them. But personally speaking, I can say that if you travel enough, something's going to happen, right? And it might not be as extreme as some of those cases that you would see on a movie. But, I personally have experienced a few unpleasant situations. I was traveling India for a few months, and my first week there, I must have eaten something bad, even though I was being super, super cautious about what I was eating. I wasn't touching street food. I was only drinking bottled water. but I ended up getting E. coli poisoning, and I ended up being hospitalized in a somewhat sketchy Indian hospital for about 4 days. In the end, everything was fine. My healthcare providers were great. It was an experience in itself, character building for sure. But had I not had traveler's insurance, that would have set me back about $1,500. But because I had that, I also had the peace of mind knowing that I wasn't going to have to worry about the financial end of that experience. So it's always a good idea to have travel insurance. It provides peace of mind so that you can fully enjoy your trip without having to worry about if one of those, crazy scenarios is going to happen to you.
And there's a lot of different types of traveler's insurance. So someone like Scott, who's finding whatever he can jump off of in whatever far-flung location, or the person who just is afraid of food poisoning, so there's kind of different types. So walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. So most travel insurance plans cover medical emergencies, medical evacuation, as scary as it sounds, accidental death and dismemberment, trip delays, and lost and stolen luggage. I do want to throw in right here that even if you have if you're covered by medical insurance in your home country, it's likely not going to apply to cases outside of the country. So they're two very different things. So that's what's covered by most travel insurance plans. Some plans differ in the various situations that they cover outside of sickness and injury. So, for example, other types of travel insurance plans cover rental car damage, pre-existing conditions, trip cancellations for any reason. Nowadays, of course, COVID-related sickness and trip interruption. And then, as we were mentioning, Molly, for the folks who are adrenaline junkies, there are also plans that cover adventure sports related accidents.
And so we have, I believe we can put these in the chat notes, and then we'll also put them in the podcast notes. But Mimsie has these listed out. So some of the travel insurance companies that you recommend. So World Nomads is the adventure travel insurance, the ice climbers, the skydivers. Then there's one that's IMG travel insurance. And this is plans that are specifically designed for retired travelers 65 and older. So the Seven Corners, you said, has coverage for pre-existing conditions. So we'll post these in the episode notes, also in the Zoom chat. A big thing, though, to keep in mind, like you say, is to buy it before you leave. That's the whole idea. It can't be that just like now, you don't have the disaster happen, you decide to buy insurance. Like you've got it in preparation, like if that might be.
And solo travel is not just outside the country. So, I implore people to know what their insurance coverage is, wherever they're going. If they're going on a mountain biking trip, a climbing trip, have your information at the ready, because again, things happen.
Right.
Absolutely. And usually they say the magic number is to get that travel insurance policy, ideally 14 days before your departure. Because let's just say, for example, you're planning a trip to Cancun, and then a week, 2 weeks, beforehand, maybe there is a named hurricane that pops up, right? And so if you have it beforehand, then you're going to be able to cancel or delay that trip without having, a larger financial loss. So
read the fine print. We have the recommended travel insurance companies that Mimsie talks about. And we have just a few more minutes. So I want to leave it open for any questions. And I know that we had a question that came through the Q&A by Zoom that said a question. I think this is great for Mimsie and for Scott, but what's the one or two things that you always make sure you do the first day when you arrive at a destination?
Scott, do you want to go first?
Oh, take it in. So I take a breath, because I always am nervous the very first time my feet hit the ground wherever I'm going. I'm nervous. So I take it in, I think, and just listen. I like, although I'm talking a lot now, usually I'm pretty quiet and I like to listen. So I just take it in and let myself calm down and enjoy the experience.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because it seems like nothing makes you nervous.
Oh, like a tuxedo. That is, I do not understand those things.
But you seem like you just roll into the new adventure. So that's very validating to hear you say, you know what, you get there, you're going through all this, and then you kind of just like, okay, let's just soak it in and just absorb it.
Yeah, that's my
okay.
I just quiet. I find a little cafe and sit and just listen and calm down.
Which also speaks to give yourself enough time so that things aren't, and this is something Scott and I will be talking over the next few weeks, but not overbooking yourself, planning. And when we had Lolly on, Travel with Lolly, and she had her travel timeline, she was very specific about no matter how much you plan for your travel, make sure you're leaving some of that downtime, like scheduled downtime. So, okay. And Mimsie, how about you? That one or two things you make sure you do first day you arrive at a destination.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Scott. Just, taking it in. And one of my favorite ways to just simply take it in is just by going on a really long walk. So again, I've usually mapped out, what my trip is going to look like. I'm a little oriented because I've studied the maps and things. But I just love walking around, and that's my favorite way to take in a city, to take in the architecture, to do a little people watching, to sort of, observe how people are living their life. And yes, that certainly helps calm my nerves as well and gets me excited for days ahead.
Or the double-decker bus tour we were talking about.
There you go. Got that back in there.
Or what Mimsie was telling us about earlier, the free tours by foot. So those are all things. If you say, well, I don't know where would I even start walking? Well, hopefully you have your pins on your My Map, the Google Maps that Mimsie talks about. You can also use the free tours by foot, the double-decker, or kind of walk and see what's your neighborhood you're going to be staying in and kind of get in the lay of the land.
That was a great question.
Yeah, that was. And Mimsie, thank you so much for this. We're going to have links to Mimsie's blog, all the different resources that she shared. I would say, I would assume that people can reach out to you through your blog if they had more questions.
Yes.
Okay, well, awesome.
Yes,
thank you.
Absolutely.
I think this has been incredibly inspiring for us, and to hear from you. I know that this is right up Scott's alley too. And so I could just listen to y'all share stories all day. I'm sad that we have to wrap it up, but Mimsie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mimsie. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you guys. It was fun chatting with y'all.
All right. Have good days. Bye y'all. Thanks everybody for joining us. Wow. How amazing is Mimsie?
That was amazing. She is just so full of knowledge and tips and real experience. I mean, you can see she's drawing on real experience. It was wonderful.
She lives it. And like she said, she's a little bit of, she referred to herself as an introvert, but she's not someone that you'd be like, man, she's just like wild and crazy. She's going to take all these risks, but she takes very calculated risk, and she's done her research, and she puts herself out there and puts herself in these experiences.
And I think she's the perfect person to discuss solo travel because it's very calculated.
Yes.
Because it can be scary and overwhelming, but not when you take a calculated approach to it. It was wonderful.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And that she's taken so much from these experiences she's had and brought these into her life now, like Gotchi Tea, her tea business.
Right. And that kind of speaks to our very first guest, Danny, talking about what travel can do beyond just seeing something outside of the United States or even within the United States, but seeing something in yourself and finding a passion you didn't know it was there until you actually have these experiences.
Right. He went from working at HP to now he advises and guides people on finances, a financial advisor, but specifically with the ultimate goal of living a life and planning for the things that you truly enjoy. And what not just, okay, let me pay for what I'm doing right now, but ultimately, what is it that I really want in life? And he was fortunate enough and really, again, strategic in finding that for himself, and now has turned that into his business to guide others.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Amazing stories.
So really, really cool stuff. We're grateful, as always, that Scott and I have the opportunity to do this and to host this dream series, this travel series. We'll be doing it again in 2022 with the Dream Bold initiative. And we were actually talking about that for 2022. And we were talking about how we would still be teamed up. We have to be still teamed up.
I think so. It's a good team.
They were asking us do we want to have teams of 2 or 3 or just 1? And I thought it doesn't matter to me if it's 2 or 3 as long as Scott and I are on the same team.
Really good team.
Fantastic.
You're captain, but this is a good team.
So we'll have Mimsie shared tons of great information with us. Scott too. We'll include the links that Mimsie talked about in the show notes of this episode. Always let us know what you think. If you're incorporating, some of her tips, some of her strategies, the things that she and Scott shared, We want to hear about it. I'm also going to include our email, our Dream Bold Astronaut email, which if you have questions or anything like that, you can send specific travel questions or the Dream Bold project questions to that email. And thank you, Scott, for being my co-host again.
Thank you, Molly.
So we've got all of these. If you want to listen to past episodes, you can just scroll back through the podcast library, find them all. I didn't count it up, but we're on 6 or 7-ish right now. So we got lots of stuff back there for travel.
Bundle. We'll say a bundle.
A bundle. We're about a midpoint in our bundle. And you can find it all back in our podcast library. And I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com. You can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.